When my mother's name flashed on my phone for the 5th time, I watched it vibrate against my glass desk. Outside my window, Seattle's skyline gleamed in the afternoon sun, 7 stories up and 600 miles from the suburban home where I learned to make myself small. They needed me now for my brother's wedding, but they had no idea who I'd become or the boundaries I was about to set. My mother's name flashes on my phone screen for the 5th time. I watch it vibrate against my glass desk, the sleek surface a far cry from the scratched oak table where I did homework as a child. Outside my window, Seattle's skyline gleams in the afternoon sun, 7 stories up and 600 miles from the suburban home where I learned to make myself small. I hover my finger over ignore again. The leather chair creaks as I shift my weight. The phone falls silent. 3 seconds later, an email notification appears from Helen Parker. Subject: Your brother needs you. Last chance. My stomach tightens as I open it, the words blurring together except for the final line. Mason's wedding is the most important event of his life. Be there or forget about any future support. A voicemail notification pops up next. I press play and set it on speaker. Grace, it's your mother. Her voice fills my apartment, commanding as ever. I don't know what game you're playing, but this has gone on long enough. Your brother's wedding is in 2 weeks, and the festivities start this weekend. If you can't put aside whatever grievance you have for Mason's special time, then you can forget about any future support from this family. Your father is beside himself with worry. Call me back immediately. A bitter laugh escapes my throat. I cross to the closet and pull out a framed diploma hidden behind winter coats. The golden embossing catches the light. Grace Elizabeth Parker, Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering, summa cum laude. 3 years collecting dust instead of hanging on my wall, because old habits die hard. My phone buzzes with a text from my father. Please call your mother. She's getting impatient. I glance at the calendar on my desk. Mason's 2-week wedding extravaganza is highlighted in angry red. 14 days of ceremonies, parties, and photo shoots for the golden child's perfect day. I tap open my banking app, $142,567 in savings. More than enough to never need their support again. They just don't know it yet. A memory surfaces. 3rd grade, clutching my report card with 5 perfect A's. Mom at the kitchen table, nodding without looking up from her magazine. That's nice, honey. That same night, the living room erupting in cheers for Mason's participation ribbon from the school play. Did you see how he projected his voice? He was the best one up there. Dad's face glowing with pride while I sat invisible on the stairs. The science fair my sophomore year. The blue ribbon I won for analyzing local water quality. The empty chairs where my parents should have been. They'd gone to Mason's basketball game instead. He'd scored 6 points, and they talked about it for weeks. Principal Williams handed me my award. Your parents must be so proud. I nodded, the hollow feeling in my chest already familiar. Then senior year, the thick acceptance package from the University of Washington. My hands trembling as I read the scholarship offer. Seattle? Mom's forehead creased with concern. That's so far away. Mason might feel inferior if you go there when he's just attending community college. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. We've discussed this. You're staying local. End of story. The quiet negotiation that followed. I could live in the dorms at State just 20 minutes away for quiet study, I'd argued. They agreed, believing I'd surrendered. 2 weeks later, I boarded a bus to Seattle with everything I owned in 2 suitcases, leaving a carefully crafted paper trail of community college registration and a fake dorm assignment. The calculated risk of my first real independence. Now I stand before my bathroom mirror, no longer the invisible daughter. My reflection shows someone they wouldn't recognize. Confident, successful, unburdened by the need for their approval. I return to my desk and trace my fingers over my name on the diploma. Grace Elizabeth Parker, software engineer, 6-figure salary, invisible no more. My laptop screen glows as I open the airline website. My fingers move decisively across the keyboard, booking a first-class ticket home. Time they finally see me, I whisper to my reflection in the darkened screen. I pack my designer luggage with precision, tucking the diploma between layers of clothes. A gentle smile spreads across my face as I imagine their expressions when they finally learn who I've become. Have you ever had to hide your success from those who should have celebrated it most? What would you do if your family only valued you when they needed something from you? My homecoming is about to teach them a lesson they never expected. The rental car crunches over familiar gravel. I park behind a florist's van unloading cascades of white roses. My childhood home has transformed into something from a bridal magazine, with navy blue fabric swags draped across the porch railings. My mother opens the door before I knock. Her hair is colored a precise shade of honey blonde, not a strand out of place. Grace, finally. Her hug feels like a performance, too stiff and too brief. Decided to support your brother, I see. Inside, the house smells of vanilla candles and fresh paint. Wedding planning has turned every surface into a staging area. My father emerges from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose. He doesn't hug me, just nods over a clipboard. Good. You're here. The programs need to be folded and these guest welcome bags assembled. He thrusts the clipboard into my hands. Mason needs these done by 4. I just walked in the door, Dad. And now you have something useful to do. Mason appears at the top of the stairs, phone pressed to his ear. No, I specifically said cascading arrangement, not gathered. This is literally ruining everything. He spots me and holds up one finger in the universal sign for wait. Do you understand this is the most important day of my life? When he finally descends, he air kisses near my cheek. Grace, thank God. The caterer is threatening to quit, and Mom is useless with the seating chart. Nice to see you too, Mason. Victoria's planning the surprise for the reception, and I need to make sure it coordinates with everything else. Victoria? I set down my bag. His fiancée, my mother supplies. You'll meet her at dinner. She's absolutely wonderful, such a brilliant investor. Hedge fund genius, Mason corrects with obvious pride. Victoria Brady arrives at precisely 6:30, carrying an expensive bottle of wine and wearing a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. She's taller than I expected, with the kind of polished beauty that belongs in commercials for luxury skincare. The mysterious sister finally appears. She grips my hand too firmly. Mason said you were some kind of computer geek hiding away in the big city. Software engineer, I correct. Sounds intense, she winks. I've got some friends developing a fintech platform, revolutionary stuff. We should talk shop sometime. Like during dinner, Victoria dominates with tales of investment strategies and exclusive opportunities. My father hangs on every word. So which funds do you primarily manage? I ask during a rare pause. Victoria's smile freezes momentarily. Oh, a mix. Mostly private accounts. Exclusive access through my network. Fascinating. And your company's based where? We're decentralized, she replies smoothly. The beauty of modern finance, right? I've got partners in Singapore, Zurich, Dubai. My father shoots me a warning look. Grace, not everyone wants to discuss business at dinner. Later, searching for wedding programs in my father's study, I stumble across refinancing paperwork for the house, dated 3 weeks ago. The property I grew up in, which had been nearly paid off, now carries a sizable new mortgage. Voices drift from the adjacent dining room. James, are you sure about this second mortgage? My mother's worried tone freezes me in place. That's everything from my inheritance, too. Victoria has guaranteed 18% returns minimum, Helen. But $180,000 is... You wouldn't understand investments like these, my father cuts her off. This is what building real wealth looks like. I lean against the wall, my engineer's brain calculating risk factors. Second mortgage, family savings, inheritance, all flowing toward Victoria's vague investment opportunity. She's a fraud. Aunt Sarah's voice is barely above a whisper as we stand in the back garden, supposedly admiring her contributions to the wedding flowers. "You see it too?" I ask. She nods, her gray eyes so similar to mine, sharp with concern. "Your father won't listen to me. Started talking about how I've always been jealous of his success." She sighs. "Mr. Wilson down the street lost $90,000 in an exclusive investment opportunity last year," she continues. "Sounded awfully familiar when I heard about Victoria's proposals." "Grace?" A familiar voice calls from the fence line. Mr. Jenkins, my old computer science teacher, waves. "I've been following your career. That Washington engineering program you attended is one of the best in the country." I freeze. "How did you—" "Unlike your parents, some of us actually pay attention, Grace." Aunt Sarah pats my hand. For the first time since arriving, I feel seen. "Dad, Mom, I think we need to talk about Victoria." We're in the living room that evening. "What about her?" My father doesn't look up from his newspaper. "I've noticed some inconsistencies in her business claims. The way she describes her investments doesn't align with how hedge funds actually function." My mother sighs dramatically. "Honestly, Grace, you've always been jealous of your brother's happiness. This isn't about jealousy. Her investment claims don't make mathematical sense." My father finally looks at me, his expression hardening. "You don't understand business at this level, Grace. Not everything fits into your little coding projects." The front door opens, and Mason enters with Victoria. He immediately senses the tension. "What's going on?" "Your sister has concerns about Victoria's business." Mason's face crumples. "Are you serious? You show up after 3 years and immediately try to ruin the only good thing in my life?" Victoria places a protective arm around him. "It's okay, babe. Some people just don't understand innovation." I look at their faces, defensive, dismissive, deluded, and realize I've miscalculated. They don't want the truth. They want the comfortable fiction that makes Mason special and Victoria a princess. The invisible daughter sees everything, but no one wants to look. When you see loved ones heading for disaster, how far should you go to protect them from themselves? Would you risk further rejection to save family who never appreciated you? The coffee shop where I sit is 5 blocks from my parents' house, but feels worlds away from the wedding chaos. My laptop screen displays Victoria Brady's LinkedIn profile. Impressive credentials, prestigious firms, glowing recommendations. Too perfect. I tap my security token and log into databases I have legitimate access to through my work. Public records first. Victoria Brady, age 32. 3 addresses in the past year. Previous names, Victoria Brennan, Victoria Blake. Multiple name changes, I murmur, making notes. Could be marriages, could be something else. A search for Victoria's claimed hedge fund yields nothing concrete, just a sleek website with stock photos and vague promises of exclusive investment opportunities. No SEC registrations, no official filings. My phone buzzes with a text from Mason. "Where are you? Mom needs help with centerpieces." I ignore it and dial a number I found in Victoria's contact list when she left her phone unattended during breakfast. "Hello?" A man's cautious voice answers. "Is this Daniel Mercer?" "Who's asking?" "My name is Grace Parker. I believe you know Victoria Brady, or maybe you knew her as Victoria Blake?" Silence stretches for several seconds. "How did you get this number?" "I'm researching Victoria. She's engaged to my brother." A bitter laugh. "Let me guess. She's got some amazing investment opportunity that's going to make everyone rich?" My stomach tightens. "You invested with her." $500,000. My retirement. Gone." His voice breaks. By the time I realized what was happening, she'd disappeared. Changed her name, her number, everything. "Would you be willing to meet? I need to understand what happened." 2 hours later, Daniel Mercer sits across from me, sliding a folder across the table. Police reports, bank statements, everything I have. They couldn't prosecute because she covered her tracks too well. I flip through documents showing wire transfers to offshore accounts, screenshots of investment portals that no longer exist, and photos of Victoria with different hair colors standing next to different men. She targets successful families, Daniel explains. Finds the golden child, makes them feel special, then convinces the family to invest in her schemes. Once she has the money, she manufactures a fight and disappears. How many times has she done this? That I know of, at least 3. But she's careful, uses slightly different names, targets different cities. I spend the afternoon in the public library, digging through newspaper archives and court records. Victoria Brennan was engaged to a doctor's son in Portland 3 years ago. Victoria Blake nearly married into a real estate family in San Diego before that. Each time, family funds disappeared shortly before the wedding. At the courthouse, I request records of recent property transfers. My parents' second mortgage isn't just for $180,000. It's for $320,000, nearly the entire value of their home. My phone rings again. Mason. Where are you? The rehearsal dinner is in 2 hours. I'll be there, I promise, gathering my evidence into a folder. I stop at a print shop and make copies of everything. Daniel's documents, the newspaper clippings, property records, screenshots of Victoria's previous identities. The evidence forms a damning portfolio. Back at the house, I slip upstairs to change for the rehearsal dinner. Victoria stands in the hallway outside my room. Finding everything you need? Her smile is perfect, practiced. Just getting ready. You know, Grace, she steps closer. I've noticed you asking a lot of questions. Very investigative of you. Just trying to get to know my future sister-in-law. Her eyes harden, though her smile remains. Some people might find that intrusive. Mason tells me you've always been jealous of his success. Is that what success looks like? Living at home at 32? We all define success differently. She adjusts her diamond bracelet. Some hide away in Seattle pretending to be important. Others build real wealth and connections. Like your hedge fund? The one with no SEC registration? The mask slips for just a second, calculation flashing in her eyes before the smile returns. You really don't understand high finance, do you? Not everything follows conventional paths. No, some things follow criminal ones. She laughs, the sound like breaking glass. Be careful, Grace. Families choose sides, they always do. Ask yourself who they'll believe. The daughter they barely know or the woman making all their dreams come true. As she glides away, I clutch my folder of evidence. The weight of what I've discovered settles on my shoulders. At the rehearsal dinner, I watch Victoria charm the room. My father raises a toast to our brilliant new daughter who's bringing financial wisdom to the family. My mother beams. Mason looks at Victoria like she's his salvation. The folder sits heavy in my bag. Tonight I'll show them everything. Tonight they'll have to see the truth. But Victoria's words echo. Families choose sides. Will they believe evidence over emotion? Will they finally see me, or am I still invisible compared to what they want to believe? The rehearsal dinner glitters with champagne flutes and forced laughter. I sit at the edge of the family table, my folder of evidence tucked beside me like a bomb waiting to detonate. Victoria holds court at the center, one manicured hand resting possessively on Mason's arm. We're thinking Bali for the honeymoon, but Victoria's investors have offered their villa in Santorini, Mason announces. Investors who don't exist, I mutter under my breath. Aunt Sarah catches my eye from across the table and raises an eyebrow. I give her a slight nod. When dessert arrives, my father taps his glass. Before we conclude this wonderful evening, Victoria has an exciting announcement. Victoria stands, radiant in designer silk. James, Helen, you've welcomed me like a daughter. And Mason, she squeezes his hand, has made me the happiest woman alive. So I wanted to give something back. She produces elegant folders with gold embossing, handing one to my parents and another to Mason's godparents. Inside, you'll find confirmation of your investment accounts. As a special pre-wedding gift, I've secured early access to our fund's newest venture. The paperwork is ready. Just sign tomorrow, and we'll transfer the funds before the ceremony. My father beams. This is incredible, Victoria. It's the least I could do, she simpers. Family takes care of family. I stand abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. And is that what you told the Mercer family in Portland, or the Blakes in San Diego? The room falls silent. Victoria's smile doesn't waver, but her eyes turn glacial. Grace, my mother hisses. Sit down. No. I pull out my folder. Before anyone signs anything, you need to see this. Mason jumps to his feet. What are you doing? Showing you who you're really marrying? I spread the documents across the table. Newspaper clippings, court filings, photographs. Victoria Brady is... Victoria Blake is Victoria Brennan. She's done this before. 3 times that I know of. Victoria laughs, but it sounds hollow. What is this? Some kind of joke? Daniel Mercer doesn't think it's funny. Neither does James Blake or the Brennan family. They all lost their savings to your exclusive investment opportunities. My father snatches up one of the articles. This is ridiculous. Victoria explained her name changes, previous marriages. Did she mention those marriages ended right after family funds disappeared? Or that there are no legal records of those marriages? Victoria's composure cracks slightly. These are lies. Jealous competitors trying to smear me. I slide forward a police report. This isn't a smear campaign. It's a pattern. Mason grabs the report, scanning it with increasing agitation. This could be anyone. Victoria Blake is a common name. Look at the photo, Mason. He stares at the grainy security camera image of Victoria withdrawing funds from an ATM, then at his fiancée. For a moment, doubt flickers across his face. Victoria places a gentle hand on his arm. Baby, your sister has always been jealous of you. Now she's trying to ruin the most important moment of your life. My father stands, face flushed with anger. That's enough, Grace. I don't know what kind of stunt you're pulling, but it ends now. It's not a stunt. I pull out the property records. You remortgaged the house for $320,000. Where is that money going, Dad? Have you already transferred it to her? My mother gasps. James, you said it was only $180,000. The investment opportunity grew, he mumbles, not meeting her eyes. There is no investment, I insist. There's no hedge fund. There's no SEC registration for any company Victoria claims to represent. Victoria's mask slips completely. You had no right to investigate me. So you admit these are real? I press. I admit nothing. She turns to my parents, tears welling perfectly on cue. I came here with nothing but love for your son, and this is how I'm treated? Accused of crimes with fake documents? Mason wraps a protective arm around her. You've gone too far this time, Grace. Mason, please, I plead. Just verify the information. Call the Portland Police Department. Talk to Daniel Mercer. His number is right there. I don't need to call anyone. He crumples the police report. I know Victoria. I love her. Love is blinding you, I say quietly. My father slams his hand on the table. Enough, Grace. You've always resented your brother's happiness. You disappeared for years, and now you return just to destroy his wedding. I'm trying to protect this family. By humiliating us in front of our friends? He gestures to the stunned dinner guests. Aunt Sarah stands. James, maybe we should consider... Stay out of this, Sarah. You've always encouraged her defiance. Victoria dabs at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I think I should go. I can't bear this hostility. No, Mason says firmly. We're not letting her drive us apart. He faces me with cold fury. Grace, you need to leave. Now. My mother remains silent, staring at the property records with growing horror. Mom? I appeal to her. Please, just look at the evidence. She shakes her head slowly. Why couldn't you just be happy for your brother? Why do you always have to make everything about you? The familiar accusation hits like a physical blow. This isn't about me. It never is it? Victoria interjects smoothly. Yet somehow, you're always at the center of the drama. I look around the table. At my father's rage, my brother's contempt, my mother's disappointment. Only Aunt Sarah meets my gaze with understanding. Fine. I gather my evidence with shaking hands. I've done what I could. The truth is right here when you're ready to see it. As I turn to leave, Victoria follows me into the hallway. You almost had me, she whispers, her voice stripped of its warmth. But you miscalculated. They'll always choose him over you. This isn't over, I warn. It was over before you started. Her smile returns as Mason approaches. I'm just getting some air, baby. Your sister was just leaving. Outside, the night air feels thick with failure. My phone buzzes with a text from Aunt Sarah. You did the right thing. They're not ready to hear it yet. I sit in my rental car, watching the lights of the rehearsal dinner through the window. My family clusters around Victoria, consoling her. Mason shoots a venomous glance toward the window. My father approaches the car as I start the engine. He raps on the window. I don't know what's happened to you, he says when I roll it down. But until you apologize to Victoria and Mason, you're not welcome at the wedding. Dad, please. We've transferred the money already. The deal is done. All you've accomplished is making a scene and hurting your brother. The money is gone? My heart sinks. The money is invested, he corrects stiffly, something you clearly don't understand. As he walks away, I make a decision. If they won't listen to reason, I'll have to find another way to save them, even if they hate me for it. I dial a number on my phone. Detective Harmon, this is Grace Parker. I'd like to report a fraud in progress. Sometimes being seen isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be the villain in their story to save them from themselves. Morning light filters through my hotel room curtains. The wedding is in 6 hours, and my phone shows no missed calls from family. Only a text from Detective Harmon. Need more evidence for warrant. Working on it. I dress methodically in jeans and a sweater, not the bridesmaid's dress hanging in my childhood closet. The dress I was disinvited from wearing. A knock at my door reveals Aunt Sarah, holding coffee and a determined expression. They're proceeding as if nothing happened, she says, handing me a cup. Your mother found the property records you left. She confronted your father, but he convinced her it was just a temporary transfer until the investment matures. There is no investment. I sip the bitter coffee. Did you tell her that? I tried. She doesn't want to hear it. Aunt Sarah sits heavily on the edge of the bed. The wedding's still on. Victoria's acting like the wounded party, and Mason is more devoted than ever. The detective needs more evidence for a warrant, I explain. Without it, Victoria will disappear with their money right after the ceremony. What are you going to do? I stare at my laptop, where Victoria's previous identities stare back at me. Something drastic. 2 hours later, I'm parked outside the church, watching the florist arrange white roses around the entrance. My hair is pulled back severely, and I wear a blazer over my sweater, looking more corporate than wedding guest. My phone buzzes with a text from Daniel Mercer. Just landed, meeting you at 1 p.m. The wedding is at 3 p.m. It's going to be close. I watch Victoria arrive with her bridesmaids, disappearing into the church's side entrance. My mother follows shortly after, looking strained despite her elegant outfit. At 1 p.m. precisely, Daniel Mercer meets me in the coffee shop across from the church. 2 other people accompany him, a woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes, and a younger man who looks vaguely familiar. Grace, this is Margaret Blake and her son Christopher. Daniel introduces them. They're also victims. Margaret extends a hand. When Daniel called, I couldn't believe it. Victoria, we knew her as Vicky, nearly married Christopher 3 years ago. She took our family for almost $400,000, Christopher adds bitterly. I've contacted Detective Harmon, I explain. He's trying to get a warrant, but it's moving slowly. The wedding's in 2 hours. Then we don't wait for the police, Margaret says firmly. We confront her ourselves. My family won't listen, I warn. They'll listen to all of us, Daniel insists. 3 separate families with the same story? That's harder to dismiss. We formulate a plan. I'll enter first to locate Victoria. The others will follow, creating a united front that even my stubborn family can't ignore. At 2 p.m., I slip into the church through a side door. The ceremony space is decorated with cascading white flowers and navy ribbons. In the bridal suite, I hear Victoria's voice giving imperious instructions to bridesmaids. I text the others my location, then take a deep breath and knock. "No men allowed," calls a bridesmaid. "It's Grace," I reply. Silence falls. Then Victoria's voice, honey sweet. "Let her in." The door opens to reveal Victoria in her wedding gown, a confection of lace and crystals that probably cost more than my annual salary. Her bridesmaids flutter around her like anxious butterflies. "Well," Victoria arches a perfect eyebrow. "The prodigal sister returns. Come to apologize?" "Not exactly." I step inside, closing the door behind me. "I came to give you one chance to leave quietly. Return the money and I won't press charges." Victoria laughs, the sound echoing off the small room's walls. "Press charges? For what? Making investments your simple mind can't comprehend?" "For fraud. For stealing from my family and others under false pretenses." Her eyes narrow. "You have nothing." "I have Daniel Mercer, Margaret, and Christopher Blake. They're outside, and they've all identified you." For the first time, uncertainty flickers across Victoria's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I hold up my phone, showing a photo of the three waiting across the street. They've all filed police reports. Detective Harmon is building a case as we speak. Victoria dismisses her bridesmaids with a wave. When the door closes, her demeanor transforms completely. "What do you want?" she hisses. "Money? Is that it?" "I want you to return every cent you took from my parents and leave. Now." She laughs, but it's brittle. "Your parents transferred that money willingly." Good luck proving otherwise. Three separate families with identical stories make a compelling pattern. Add bank records showing where the money went, and it's enough for fraud charges. Victoria steps closer, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Listen carefully. I've spent weeks becoming exactly what your family wants. The perfect daughter-in-law, the financial savior. Even if they believe you, which they won't, they'll resent you forever for taking that away. I'll take their resentment over their bankruptcy." "Such nobility," she mocks. "But we both know this isn't about protecting them. It's about finally being seen. Poor, invisible Grace, desperate for attention." The door opens before I can respond. My mother stands there, eyes widening at the sight of me. "Grace, what are you doing here? Your father was clear—" "Mom, please, just listen." Victoria cuts in, tears instantly materializing. "Helen, she's threatening me on my wedding day." After everything she did at the rehearsal dinner. My mother's face hardens. "Grace, I think you should leave." "Not until you hear the truth." I pull out my phone. Daniel Mercer, Margaret Blake, and her son Christopher are here. They all identified Victoria as the woman who scammed their families. "More strangers with your fabricated stories?" My mother shakes her head. "They're not strangers to Victoria. Ask her about Portland. Ask her about San Diego." Victoria clutches my mother's arm. "Helen, she's trying to ruin everything. Please, make her leave." The standoff is interrupted by commotion in the hallway. Daniel, Margaret, and Christopher push past a protesting bridesmaid. "That's her," Christopher points. "That's Vicky Blake." Margaret steps forward, eyes locked on Victoria. 3 years ago, you were engaged to my son. You convinced our family to invest $400,000 in a non-existent venture capital fund. The day after we transferred the money, you disappeared." Victoria backs away. "These people are crazy. I've never seen them before." Daniel pulls out his phone. "I have photos of us together at my family's lake house. You were Victoria Brennan then. You had darker hair, but it's unmistakably you." My mother looks between Victoria and the accusers, confusion clouding her features. "This can't be right." "Helen," I say gently, "where's Dad? Where's the money?" "He's finalizing the investment transfer with Victoria's associate. In the church office." My heart sinks. What associate? Victoria works alone. We rush to the church office, finding my father signing papers with a man in an expensive suit. "Dad, stop!" I burst in. "It's a scam!" The man smoothly gathers the papers. "Everything's in order, Mr. Parker. The transfer is complete." "Who are you?" I demand. "Thomas Weldon, Victoria's business partner." He extends a hand that I don't take. Daniel steps forward. "His real name is Thomas Weiss. He played the same role in Portland." My father looks bewildered. "What's happening? Who are these people?" The office door slams open again as Mason rushes in. "Dad, what's going on? Victoria's crying, saying Grace brought people to accuse her of—" He stops, seeing the gathered crowd. "Mason," I say carefully, "these people were all victims of Victoria's scams, just like our family is about to be." Christopher steps forward. "She did the same thing to me. Engaged, charming, then convinced my family to invest everything. The day after we transferred the money, she was gone." Mason shakes his head violently. No, Victoria loves me." "She loved Christopher too," Margaret says gently. "And Daniel, that's her pattern." Thomas Weiss edges toward the door, but Daniel blocks his path. "The police are on their way. You might want to stick around." My father sinks into a chair, face ashen. "The money. Our house." "How much did you transfer?" I ask. "All of it, the second mortgage, our savings, $420,000. The room spins slightly. It's worse than I thought. Mason turns on me, eyes wild. "This is your fault. You couldn't stand to see me happy." "Mason," my mother says quietly, "look at these people. Listen to them." For the first time, doubt creeps into his expression. "Where's Victoria? I need to talk to her." But when we return to the bridal suite, Victoria is gone. Her wedding dress lies discarded on the floor, and her bag is missing. "Check the parking lot," I instruct, already running. Outside, we're just in time to see Victoria, now in jeans and a blouse, sliding into a waiting car. Our eyes meet across the distance. She smiles, a cold, triumphant smile, and then she's gone. Detective Harmon arrives 10 minutes later, taking statements and putting out an APB. "We'll freeze the accounts if we can," he tells my shell-shocked father. "But these types are good at moving money quickly." My family stands in the empty church, surrounded by flowers for a wedding that will never happen. Mason sits in a pew, head in his hands. My mother stares blankly at nothing. "I tried to tell you," I say softly. My father looks at me, really looks at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "Yes," he admits, "you did." It's not forgiveness or gratitude, but it's something I've waited a long time for. Acknowledgement. Sometimes being seen comes at a terrible price.